All right. We're here today with Mr. Louis Philippe. How you doing tonight?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing a bit of sunshine in miserable London.
Oh man. Yeah, I guess it's dark there now, huh?
It's dark. It's 5 o'clock local time. It's been dark for an hour already, so it's pretty miserable.
Ooh.
It's not quite Helsinki in the middle of the winter, but we do make a rather good impression of it. Come 3 o'clock, it starts getting dark. So thank you for bringing sunshine.
Oh, you're very welcome. Speaking of which, your press release uses the phrase the autumnal side of sunshine pop, which I thought was a beautiful phrase.
It's not mine.
Ah, all right.
Or maybe it was, I can't remember. Yes, autumnal was actually a good word, I think, to choose for the record.
Yes. I know I associate certain bands and albums with certain seasons. Do you find the same?
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you say autumnal, the Clientele, for example, are very much a band which I associate with that. With the spring, I would associate like Roger Nichols and the Small Circle of Friends, to go into something which is a little bit niche, but there you go. I would say a lot of like the meters would be summery, would be summer.
Yeah.
Okay, because obviously you would go for the Beach Boys summer, yeah, but not all of the Beach Boys are summer. Some of the Beach Boys are actually winter. Some of the more experimental stuff. But yes, I wouldn't, go straight thinking, oh, yes, of course, this is a January record. This is a March record. But yes, it's not forcing to associate a record or a type of music with a time of the year. Not at all. And autumn, for some reason, seems to be more evocative than other seasons when it comes to music.
Yes, I find that as well. And the clientele, perfect example. I hadn't thought of them, but definitely.
I think it's because in pop there's always a solar sunshine element, but in which, I mean, most great pop, I'm not saying my record is great. It is great, but that's not what I'm saying.
It's great.
There's an element of melancholy and nostalgia, and this is, like the leaves turning and the days shortening and a different kind of warmth. So yes, I suppose that autumn really fits in very well with my idea of pop.
Evokes twilight as well.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Actually, there's actually even the song on the record which is about twilight, which is the song about the mighty owl, which is the owl of Minerva, which only comes out when it gets dark.
Excellent.
There you go.
There's a French phrase someone told me once, entre les chiens et les loups.
Entre chien et loup. Yeah. Marvelous expression.
Yes.
You can't tell whether it's, I was going to say, you can't tell whether it's fish or fowl. No, you can't tell whether it's a dog or a wolf. Absolutely. This time of the day, the most dangerous time of the day. When you're driving, sorry.
But there's that idea of autumn as well, with that sort of, the transition between summer and winter, that period. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I would go with that, definitely. And I think even when you look at the sleeve of the record, you've got an element of that which is very autumnal,
Yeah. Who did the sleeve?
We did it. That this band is full of people who are some multitaskers. So the photograph was taken by me, but the lettering was painted by Robert, the guitar player Robert Rotifer, who is a very talented painter in his own right. And all the putting together, editing, preparing the parts, making sure everything was done by Ian, the drummer, who is a bit of a genius at putting things together like that, who also edited our videos, for example. So it was all done in-house, so to speak.
Excellent. I've only seen the Fall in a Daydream video. Are there more?
There's one coming out tomorrow.
Oh, all right.
There's one coming out tomorrow. And there's a third one, which is for the Mighty Owl. And there's a third one coming out on the 11th of December, which is the date that the album is released of Living on Borrowed Time. So there are 3 videos. And there's a 4th one, actually, which I can't talk about yet.
Okay.
Because I don't know if we're going to finish it in time. That's why.
But the Fall in the Daydream video is very pop. There's the lighting, roller coaster tracks, very pop as well.
Even though the subject matter is not exactly light and exactly poppy, but that's a different matter.
Well, tell me about that song.
Well, it's perhaps a bit difficult to explain. I'll try, so bear with me. But you've been going with loads of very strange things in America over the past few years, and still are going through even stranger things right now. We are also going through very strange things in the UK, particularly if you're like me, somebody who is, continental European, and so is Robert, the guitar player, is Austrian. I'm French. I lived here in London for 32 years. Robert has lived in Canterbury for nearly 20 years, I think. And so we are going through our very strange, bizarre, incomprehensible divorce with Europe at the moment, which has affected us tremendously. And it's something that Robert and I have been very much affected by. And I think the lyrics, strangely enough for me, do for once reflect a political situation. So even though you won't hear any slogans or anything like that, not quite my style, but I think the lyrics in particular, if not the music, have been very much word inspired would be wrong in this, but I would say that it has, what is happening around us has seeped into the lyrical content. And Fall in a Daydream mentions one of the worst tragedies to happen in this city here for a while, which is the Great Fire of the Grenfell Tower, in which over 70 people died. And the song is about the indifference of the rest of the country to what happened to these poor people, and the way that the country has been hardening emotionally. That in a way it's been hardened by Brexit. It's been hardened by the political situation. It's been hardened by the economic situation, and now by the pandemic in such a way which makes it very difficult to deliver your nice sunshine songs, which I would normally do. And even though the music is very bouncy, it's 6/8 waltz, but I think the lyrics are going somewhere else. I hope I haven't put off too many people from listening to it. It's still a very poppy and I think catchy and pleasant thing to listen to, but there's a bit of a sting in the tail.
Mm. What brought you to London in the first place?
I was at the time a musician between 3 jobs. Basically, I didn't have any money. I'd released a few records for Disco du Crépuscule in Brussels. And I'd been approached by a label called Blanco y Negro. Now, Blanco y Negro people will know because it was the label that Everything But the Girl released their first proper big album on. But it was a project which linked 3 of the big independents: Rough Trade, Cherry Red Records, and Crepuscule. And the idea was to create a kind of pop label with some jazz influences. I mean, I would say not eccentric pop, but pop that didn't quite fit in the little holes that have been prepared for us by the press, the media, and so forth. And I was supposed to be one of those people. And so I came to London, and lo and behold, between the time I decided to go to London and the time I arrived in London, the label had collapsed. Or rather, the A&R who had recruited me, Michael Way, had left, not necessarily of his own accord, the record label. So he took me instead to this very strange house of pop called L Records, and of which I was one of the first signings. And I immediately started to work for L Records, not just as an artist, but also that somebody would give a hand, playing some guitar, doing some vocals, doing some arrangements. I wouldn't say production, but mostly arrangements, things like that, and writing songs as well for other artists on the label. And I met my wife, my future wife, very quickly. I think I met my wife on the first day that I settled in London, which is, yes, I know. And I developed immediately some quite deep friendships. And also you have to remember that at the time, certainly, as one of my Canadian friends put it, when people were asking you, oh, what do you do? you know, the typical question. If you answered, oh, I live in London, that was enough for many people because they thought that was cool. So I think there was always this ambition to be in the city that was the magnet for all people who wanted to have something to do with pop music, basically, at the time. I mean, you know, I arrived on the 27th of December 1986, which is a long time ago. So it was still, you know, it was the last hooray of the new wave, basically. I was on the tail of that particular comet, and but it felt like the right place to be, and it was the right place to be, and it's the place where I've been ever since.
Excellent. And L is such a wonderful, unique label.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you, song I love, King of Luxembourg's Baby, you wrote.
I did.
Yes. Tell me about that one, because.
Wow, it was part of. What's funny is I never recorded it myself.
Yeah.
and I remember recording the demo back at the farm, back at the ranch in Normandy, where I was born and grew up, as my parents farmers, fruit farmers. Oh. And I recorded it in one of the cold storage rooms, the demo, with a friend of mine. And we put that on a cassette, as one did at the time. And I sent this cassette to Mike Allway, as one of the potential singles or potential songs that to be included on my second album. And he liked it so much that he gave it to Simon. And I was all for it. I was all for it because I had moved a bit from that direction. I thought, yeah, let's go for that. And so it was part of I suppose, my reward for working with Simon on The Royal Bastard, which is still one of my favorite records. And it was that to have a couple of my songs featured on that. And I had another one as well, which I wrote with Simon on Sir, the follow-up album. But that's basically the story, is that Mike very much, he thought of me for the label as both, he called me his Trojan horse. He said, because you've got a crooning voice, so we never know, you might actually get a hit. And the other thing was the guy whom you can call and who can write songs to order almost, a kind of voice and heart in one. Or I would rather, I would hope Leiber and Stoller and Man and Vile and Goffin and King without the hits. And so he would ask me to write songs, and which is how I wrote the whole album for Anthony Adverse, The Red Shoes. And I wrote a couple of other things for which didn't see the light of day for the Florentines, and also with Martin Bates of ILS in Gaza. We actually did a whole album together, which were never released. I just remembered that,
Wow, so it's just sitting there? Oh.
Yeah. It's the only shape in which it exists is on a 4-track cassette, the old demo things that we used, these old tape recorders, 4-track.
Yeah, wow.
I've got it. So I can't play it because obviously it doesn't go at the same speed, and you wouldn't hear the songs that I recorded at Martin's Place in Coventry. Wow. I just remembered that. Amazing. Wow. All right. Well, maybe there's a new release in 2021, from the Walls.
I know some people would be very excited about that.
Well, maybe I'll get in touch with Martin, actually. I'll make a note of that.
Excellent. Another indie label that I love, I interviewed Kevin Crace a few months ago to talk about Humbug Records, which you were involved in as well.
Yes, I was, yes. Yeah, I've been involved with a number of strange, unusual record labels through my life, I suppose.
There's no information about Humbug out there, which is why I called Kevin and said, can you tell the story? Do you have anything you want to tell us about your time with?
I would say that I would have loads to say about Kevin and Humbug. I actually saw Kevin not that long ago. We bumped into each other at the premiere of a documentary on Martin Newell, before the lockdown, in the cinema in London. And Kevin hadn't changed. He was still as thin as a rake as he's ever been, with his amazing hair and amazing eyes. and he's quite a character. And I think Kevin was, well, you know, Kevin's background was in distribution. He was working with Pinnacle at the time, and you could see that what was happening to the record industry at the time is that there was no place left for people like me or Martin or other people who we like Monty or T.B. Smith, who was one of his good friends and still is. And so I thought, well, let's put together this thing and see what we can do about it. I mean, I wouldn't say that Humbug was the most professionally run label I've ever worked with. I do remember one thing which might amuse you, is that I think that out of the proceeds of some of the sales, because we did sell a few records, not that many, out of the proceeds of the sales, I remember arriving at the office, which was on the New Bulls Pond Road, which is not the nicest part in London, but in the office, there was this, look at the back of the room, there was this Dalek. You know what a Dalek is?
Yeah.
Doctor Who.
Yeah.
He had bought one of the original Daleks, which is, you know, that's humbug for you. But I'm really grateful to Kevin for many things. And obviously, I mean, he re-released one of my first album, which had only been released in Japan before that. And also, and I would say almost especially so, for putting me in touch with Martin Newell and giving me a chance to work with somebody whom I think is, I don't know if he's the greatest living Englishman, but he's certainly the greatest English lyricist, living lyricist, and one of the great tunesmiths of his generation, and somebody who should be spoken about in, you know, the same breath as people like Andy Partridge or, you know, Ray Davis, maybe even that. I mean, as one of the obviously illegitimate issue of Ray Davis, like we all are. But Martin is an absolutely magnificent songwriter. Still is, still produces gorgeous, gorgeous songs, which unfortunately not enough people have heard about, or I've heard, full stop. If they did, I think he would be, I mean, his day will come. I'm sure about that. His day will come. People realize, wow, we have this person in our midst who's written all these magnificent tunes. So Humbug was fantastic for that, because I produced the off-white album for Martin in very peculiar circumstances that I really cannot go into.
Okay.
But it was a bit hairy as an experience, but I loved doing it, and I loved some of the things we did with it. It's not many records which are recorded with a single microphone in the middle of the forest, but you know, one of the tunes on that record is recorded like that, and sounds gorgeous actually.
Oh, really? Which one?
Gosh, the titles. You know, I'm terrible with titles. Good Night, Country Girl.
Oh, probably my favorite on that album.
It's glorious. It's glorious. So yes, that's literally we started a fire. The dog was running around, Martin his mandolin, and I was there freezing, holding the microphone with my little portable DAT machine, and this is how we recorded it. Similarly, we recorded some of the songs in his living room. He had a tack piano, which is completely out of tune, and we recorded, Lines Drunk on Sunlight was recorded there, and then we overdubbed and had to detune all the violins, and we had to sing out of tune so that it would go with the original piano track. Oh my goodness! So it was a bit hairy, but it was great to do that with Martin.
Oh, excellent! Wow. You mentioned your parents were fruit farmers. I always associate fruit with pop music, just the sweetness.
Yes.
Do you remember when you fell in love with pop music as a kid?
I think I was born in love with pop music. I think I was asked the question recently, what is the first tune you can remember hearing that you really liked? And it was this cheesy MOR hit, but which is a beautiful pop tune, which is called Cast Your Fate to the Wind by Sounds Orchestral, which has got one of the most glorious melodies, but which is a completely pop tune. But it sounds a bit, when you start, you think, oh, is that going to be, I don't know, one of those cheesy, MF music for pleasure kind of tunes. And I think the tune was written by Vince Guarani, the jazzman. And if you don't know it, just listen to it, or even put a little snippet in this podcast. And it was pop. And that's the first tune I remember that being completely obsessed with. And I was at the time like 4 years old. So, and you see as well the fact of having an elder brother, or I should say older brother, by 6 years. So my brother was bang in time to be caught in the whirlwind of Beatlemania. He was a little bit on the young side, but he was old enough to buy the singles. So that's what he would play in the room next to mine. So I remember hearing Girl, the first time he played it. I thought, wow, this is great. So I was very, very young, but still, it can, and the fact when you grew up in a home where there is an awful lot of music being played, and my mother is a great music lover, and she loves jazz, but she's also a great lover of Michel Legrand and of really good French chansons. So I think if you put all that together, I think you understand why I became who I became, musically speaking.
Okay, I see that.
But pop, definitely, from the beginning.
Yeah, nice. So let's get to the new record. It's hard to believe this was the first time you've done a record live with a live band in the studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's my 17th album, and plus all the records I've done with other people, and so you can add another 30 or whatever. And it's the first time we really had a live band in the studio. I've worked with a band before. There was an album of mine called My Favorite Part of You, which I recorded with a proper band, but most of the recording was done, separately. So you would put the drums tracks first, then you would put the bass. So you would do drums and bass if you felt really, wow, let's take it, to that space. There, it was completely different because we'd done some rehearsal before, which I'd never done before. I'd never rehearsed an album before.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So, and, being with Ian and Andy and Robert, and we basically I sat at the piano and Andy on his bass, Robert on his guitar, Ian at the drums. Off we go. And even though, we did some overdubs afterwards, and I know it sounds very expensive because of where it was and because how well it was recorded in a beautiful place that we were in, but it was more or less done, yes, as a straight live record. And it was done at a pace that people would associate with the early 1960s, not with the 2000s. So it was done incredibly quickly, including by contemporary standards. So I lost you for a second here.
Okay.
Is that fine? Okay. No, but otherwise, yes, it's the first time I've done a proper live record. It's very exciting, I must say.
Yeah. How did it all come together?
I have to thank Robert, who convinced me to play at a place called the Lexington, a marvelous club in London, where I performed a few times before. I've known, for 15 years or so now. And I think we toyed the idea of, we would go to each other's concerts and things like that. I was toying with the idea of covering some of his songs even at times. And I did. I covered one song of his this summer. Anyway, he said, well, there's this opportunity. Lexington, you like it? Yeah, I love it. We're organizing with Tapete, the German label, a series of gigs to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the label. And there'll be some good people. Robert Foster of the Go-Betweens will be playing, and we'll be backing him. And that is the Night Mail. The Monochrome Set will be there. And I've always loved the Monochrome Set, and I've known Bid for 30 years. Friedrich Sunlight, which is this absolutely fantastic band, which is on Tapete, German band. And and I thought, well, actually, he got the band together. So him, Ian, and Robert, and we started rehearsing in Highbury. And from the very first, rehearsal, I thought these are the guys that I can play with. because they have the same kind of culture, the same feel, the same affinity with pop music. They also are very capable, because some of my music is a little bit complicated to execute. And they had exactly the right spirit, attitude. They were fun. So we thought, oh, let's do it. And we had a great gig. And many people who've seen, a few of my gigs will tell you that it probably was the best that I ever gave in this kind of configuration. And it felt great to us. It felt really great. So we thought, we've got to do a record. And then, what happens is that you've got to synchronize the diaries of everybody. You've got to find the time and so on. And then as every time we seemed to be on the cusp of doing something would happen. And then COVID happened. And Robert and I talked to each other and we thought, we've really got to do it now. We've really got to do it, because otherwise we've got Brexit coming. We've got this pandemic. We've got to find a way to do this record before it's too late. So there was a real sense of urgency about it. And in fact, I'll tell you that from the moment that we decided to do the record, and the day we finished it, I think maybe a month had passed. So within a month, we'd chosen the songs, rehearsed them, recorded them, mixed them, done the videos, done everything, the artwork, everything was done within a month or so. And there was, a real sense of urgency about it. And I don't know if you can feel it in the record. I don't feel it in an obvious way, as it's not a record that we say is bâclé in French. It's not something that was done quickly on the cheap. Quite the opposite. It was done quickly, but with people, I think, who were on top of what they were doing, and certainly not on the cheap. Rimshot is not a cheap studio, bloody hell. But worth every penny. I recommend it. Please, if you're looking for a great studio in rural England, go for Rimshot in Sittingbourne. It's wonderful. And we'll be back there. So that's how the record came about. It's thanks to Robert. It's thanks to Gunther of Tapete Records, who convinced us that it was possible, and who also financed it, which is this amazing thing in this day and age, to have record companies paying for a record. It's almost unheard of. Yeah. Now you do a record in your bedroom, your front room, you're with friends. You do everything, and then you find a label and you create your own label. But it's done the old-fashioned way in a sense, and I'm quite happy with that. I'm very happy with that. So, wow. So it's my own project restart.
Great. Now, the gig you did at the Lexington, did you do any of these songs that are on the record?
No. No, it was all the songs that were on the record were songs chosen from my backlog, which is, you can imagine, it was rather considerable. Because the last songs of mine which had been put on the record were the songs I'd written for the Ocean Tango project with my Swedish friends from Test Build.
Oh yeah, which is, album.
I think it's a wonderful album, and I say that all the more easily that quite a few of the songs, and for me some of the best songs were not written by me but by Peter Herbertsson, who is an absolutely magical songwriter. It's not on Bandcamp, unfortunately. It's a very difficult album to find, and I've got to convince Peter to do something about it because I'm really proud of it. Anyway, so you can imagine there was a lot of back material, and so Robert and I went through. Came to my home, to this room, because the piano is just on the other side, and we went through, I think, 70 tunes or something like that. And we chose the ones which obviously we thought were good enough, but also would be, you could execute, arrange for this type of band. Because the premise of some of my stuff is very orchestral, and you're not going to be orchestral with, a 4-piece band, which is with an added strings player, an added trumpet player, and a bit of mellotron. You can't do that. So you had to find songs which worked in that kind of context. And then afterwards, a bit of rehearsal and so forth. But the stuff we'd done at the Lexington, and some of which, by the way, I should tell you, because we're going to do, I don't know if you know about that, but we're going to do a live gig in December. Excellent. And on the net, but it's going to be a proper one, like properly filmed, properly engineered and so forth. And we're going back to the studio to Rimshot in Sittingbourne, and on the 16th of December, so just 5 days after the album's official release. And we'll be doing a full set. So that will be on live on the internet through a dedicated website and everything. So very posh,
Great.
like 6 cameras and
Wow.
all these sort of things, and really good sound. I hope so, and I hope we have, we're good enough to, we can do something which is as good as we hope to. But that's also quite an event for us, and it takes a bloody lockdown to actually. I mean, how paradoxical is that?
Yeah,
This is a strange age.
indeed. So let's talk about some of the songs on the record. I think my favorite is Rio Grande. I mean, that instrumental intro is just pop perfection. It's so
Thank you.
lovely.
That's the way we felt about it when we started. And I hope you can feel it, but we were having such fun banging those chords.
Yeah.
We really
Totally
went
tell.
into it. It's really had fun going bang, 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 bang. So nice, 4 to the bar. And then Shanty's wonderful trumpet playing, I mean, which is just glorious. And this is the, because in a way, I mean, this song, this kind of little suite, was actually the way I'd thought about the record before we started working together. Because in my mind, I was thinking of doing quite an experimental album, miniatures, sort of like vignettes and so forth, which would be stuck together. Point the fact of using musical cells rather than verse chorus cells, and this one was actually, to start with, was a cell, and then we realized actually no, it's a song, and it works perfectly well, even though we have got 3 very different sections, a very poppy one, a kind of weird, quite menacing one, and then a pop song with a proper pop chorus, which goes back into, and yeah, no, it works. It does work. That's, I suppose, is, to use a word which is tainted these days, it's almost proggy, but in the kind of Canterbury prog kind of,
okay.
Canterbury. I'm not thinking about, Genesis, certainly not. I'm more thinking Caravan and National Health. So it's definitely pop music, but structurally, it's a bit of a funny house we built there, but it's still pop. I still think it's just pure pop, really. That was the idea, and that that was the idea. That was what it felt like to us. That it was a pure pop song. Even the way that the vocal harmony in the chorus, which is built under the lead line, which is a typical kind of pop gesture, English pop gesture, or the orchestration and the use of the 12 string and so forth. That was pure pop, but that's really our language, when that's the advantage of working with people who share the same feel for things, and very often, I wouldn't say I have the same ideas, but as soon as you've got an idea, they see immediately what you mean by that. Immediately, you don't need to explain anything. So yeah, cool, we understand what you mean there.
Now, these cells you mentioned, is that like Alphaville?
Yeah, which was at the beginning of Cell, which is only like 2 bars. I think, what are you going to do with it? Well, I thought, first of all, that the tune was so pregnant. That's a Gallicism, by the way. Pregnant, not in that sense, but it has something incredibly insistent to it. And once it gets in your brain, as it got in mine, I just couldn't get rid of it. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do what my friend Shona Hagen would do with this. So, and which means I'm not going to develop it. So it's purely going to be about the orchestration and the arrangement. It's not going to be about musical development. And which is probably the first time I've done anything like that. And which is wonderfully.
I lost your sound.
Am I back?
You're back.
I'm back. I said that was not a live track. I mean, the very basic thing was done live with Robert, Andy, Paul. I'll say Paul Shanty. His second name is Paul. Shanty. The 4 of us plus Shanty. We played it live, but then afterwards, I started having fun on the clavinova and on the mellotron. and Ian with a bit of percussion as well. So yeah, that was to start with. It was one of those vignettes. I've got plenty. That's the great thing. I always, when I finish a record, in this particular case, I do have the music, which is reassuring.
The title, is that a Godard reference?
Yep. And it has to do with, and again, it's Robert and me thinking the same thing at the same time. When I was showing the bass line to Living on Borrowed Time, and we started to rehearse it, and then we did this, and Robert said something like, did I just see Lemmy Caution walk past? And I said, you've got it, that's exactly it. That's the title of the tune.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, Living on Borrowed Time, another one of my favorites. What I really like is when you're about to hit the chorus, it seems like you're going to hit a major chord, but you don't. And it's that expectation that is really satisfying. You keep it minor.
Yes, absolutely. Well, absolutely. There have got to be some, there is, you say that, and it's something that somebody else mentioned to me, who is Sean O'Hagan. Huh? Yeah, he said, oh, I like the way it goes. I like the way it goes, Louis. And yes, and you know what? It's a funny one. It's a song that I wrote entirely in my head. I mean, every single part. And it doesn't happen every day, but like every single part. I didn't go to the piano. When we went to the rehearsal, I hadn't even played it on the piano. I just told guys, this is the bass line, this is the drums, these are the chords, that's it. Wow. And this is how we went. And then, then things start to be added up. Like Robert says, what if I used a bottleneck? Yes. And then the outro, which is, very much going towards Les Baxter and Henry Mancini, but in a kind of film noir setting. So yeah, it's a funny one. I do hope, I always try to put a few what I would call harmonic bombs in songs, so that moments, twists and turns that you don't expect, that would catch your ear and think, oh, I wasn't expecting, that sounds a little bit funny or discordant. Or I always try to put one of those, or two in every song I write. And it's not something conscious, by the way. It's that if it isn't there, I feel it's incomplete. That's rather the way I see it.
Nice. There's another one in When London Burns. I had the expectation, it seems like it's headed for like a big chorus, and it kind of takes a different turn. There's still like a lot of energy, but it's not that chorus that I was expecting, if that makes sense. When you hit the take a breath, take a look part.
Oh, gosh. Wait until you hear the remix.
Oh, all right.
It was born as a vignette. It was born as a vignette, as just a couple of cells. Oh. And then I realized, playing it with Robert, I thought, goodness me, that's bloody catchy, this. And especially the trumpet line, which I kept singing over and over and over again. And yes, it is a bit unexpected, I suppose, but because I don't know how to say it, but when I started writing songs, I think I was very aware of the need for structure. And if you're doing pop, as in intro, verse, chorus, middle eight, chorus, coda sort of thing, I was very aware of it, and I think too much so. And as I carried on writing, I suppose it's become kind of a natural language. So I don't think in those terms now, and which explains some of the shape of some of the songs are a bit unusual. So you will not, this song, When London Burns, what is the chorus? It's hard to tell. Is it what you start with, or is it the second, I would say, cell? the man who had it all is like also like a little sweet, or no sound hits this kind of big Walker Brothers thing, perhaps at a moment when you don't expect it. And is that the chorus? No, it's not a chorus. It's kind of a middle eight, but it sort of works like a chorus. So I guess I've put aside the too obviously craftsman-like or crafty side of songwriting and try to be a bit more, which I had, for example, the last album I did under my own name, An Unknown Spring, which I'm very happy with, but there was a lot of effort in there, for example, to avoid repetition. And it was like a mental thing that I decided, I'm fed up with songs which go only one way, so let's try something different, which we did. This time it was more like, oh, okay, I feel at ease in this format. That's my natural environment. Why don't I just enjoy it and live and breathe in it and just let things flow perhaps more than is usual. And also, I suppose, it's also a consequence of working with my friend Stuart Moxon, on these albums together, and especially the last one, The Devil Laughs, which, amazingly enough, was only released, in May this year.
Oh.
And Stuart has a very different approach to songwriting to mine, but we've got the same sense of form, I think, and structure, both of us, and that we've got many other things in common. But Stuart has a very organic way of writing, which I suppose I've assimilated. You keep assimilating all the time. And also the fact that I've listened to an awful lot of Brazilian music and classical music, 20th century music, perhaps more than I've listened to pop and rock, whatever rock is. This might explain that, a greater freedom. So I'm diverging. I'm going in all sorts of directions, but there you go. This is where this is why you've got what you've got.
No Sound covers an awful lot of emotional territory in that chorus very quickly. Then again, in the middle eight, it was like, yeah. Walker Brothers.
Yeah. I mean, that's not me who thought about it. It's just it's a kind of register which I use because I can sing out. And I've done it rarely in the past. I've tried to be more delicate in my delivery, but there are moments. There's a song on Azure, Your Life, which is the moment where I realized that I could really belt it out, and it sounded okay. And this type of delivery actually suits my voice in a funny way. Not all the time, but it just does work. And as you said, it covers a wide range of emotions. I mean, what they are, I don't think I need to say what they are, because I think they're pretty obvious when you listen to the music and to the words. But there is certainly an urge to have a big yes, a big sense of assenting to life, whatever happens, which is which for me comes from even from in a very dark environment, like the environment of the universe. The song starts with the world in which it starts. It's a very dark. It's not dusk. It's the deepest night, really. But and maybe it's because the kind of churchy chords and the inversions are very churchy on this big, massive middle eight. I was thinking of Judy Seal, who is one of my all-time heroes. And because even just playing those C major, which I do very rarely, but I do this C major with this particular inversion, for me immediately brings to mind Judy Seal. So it's like pop which has gone to church. You see what I mean? And there was very much this element, and so it's very Judy Sealy for me, this type of song. And she's another one who is all about shade and nuance. When some of the songs are so, solar, and the tunes are absolutely astonishing, but there's always this behind, this incredible self-doubt that she had, and this incredible frailty and beauty that she had, inner beauty that she had, and soulfulness. So I suppose that is a kind of ideal that you think, well, it's possible to do music which is like that. You don't hold back. It's like, don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to show yourself, you know. Which is not very, yeah, sorry, please.
No, please, you. I don't
No. I would say this, it's not necessarily very pop in, you know, the way people think about pop. But if you think about great pop records, they do have this about it. I find the Beach Boys, I mean, I break down in tears when I listen to some of the songs, which are the most popular songs ever written. But there is always this undercurrent of melancholy in the very best of them, and in what I love the most about them. You know, Odyssey and Oracle, which is the other record that I, you know, basically built my pop culture on, has also got all of these moments of, you know, which has very bittersweet. I mean, bittersweet is the Bob Brummels, the Left Bank, of course. All the music that I really love has got this element of ambiguity, emotional ambiguity about it, but it's still very poppy and light and nice to the ear. Very important.
Love Is the Only Light is soul music.
Yeah, I hope the rest is too, but no. It's funny because I really hesitated before I put the song to the guys, and because I thought, you know, I don't want to sound like the guy who is trying to be a gospel singer, because I'm not a gospel singer. On the other hand, I can sing stuff like that, which comes to as a surprise to many people. But when you know, but funnily enough, you say gospel, but we were more thinking it's Andy just got it right. He said, "Oh, that's your Todd Rundgren number." I said, "Ah, yes, you got it," because it's not straight gospel, of course not, but it's got kind of soulful inflections in the way it is sung and the harmonies, and except that the harmonies of the chorus are very Utopia-like, with two major sevenths, which is one of you know, the one of the chords is actually played before it should be played, and even the little figure at the end. And we thought, and once he said that, I thought, yes, well, I think I can sing it, because I don't want to pose as somebody who is pretending to be a gospel singer, because I am not. On the other hand, I'm somebody for whom this type of music, which, you know, you might say, I mean, Todd Rundgren would be one, and also some Steely Dan would be, you know, come to mind. Yes, very much. That's very much where I come from, musically speaking. So I had a way to connect it to something that I felt more at ease with, and then go for it and love singing it. That will definitely be on the set list on the 16th.
Oh, nice. So you mentioned the Devil Laughs.
Yeah.
Tell me about how that album came together.
I've known Stuart for 27 years, and we've worked together for all these 27 years, but I was usually, up until recently, somebody who was a sideman, an accompanist, a friend, a very close friend, part of the band when we played live. I was on keyboards for some reason. And then when Stuart came with a few songs, quite a few songs actually, in the early 2000s, after we'd already been recording together, but me as a sideman, and with our very dear friend Ken Brake, who recorded the album and, you know, very sadly died in July of this year. We thought, well, let's three of us get together. We get on so well. We have such fun together. Let's work on Stuart's songs and make an album. We made a first album called The Huddle House, and then we thought, well, let's make another one, and we did. And it was it's an album which took years to create. Oh. And yes. And it was completely different because I was no longer the sideman. It was still Stuart's songs, but I was very much in a different capacity. I was, first of all, I shared some of the lead vocals, and also I was responsible for most of the arrangements. So it was me trying to build the loveliest, what's the word? It's the loveliest box in which to show those jewels that he was composing. I thought, I've got to do something. These are such wonderful songs. How can we make the most of them? And so we worked like mad on those. I mean, it's a record that is, every single detail is chiseled with a great deal of precision. Even if you hear a mistake in it, it was, believe me, it was definitely left on purpose. Nice. So, but we sat on the record for a very long time because Stuart was, there was all this program of re-releases with Tiny Global, the record label, which put it out in the end. And so there never was a right moment, and I was starting to get a bit impatient. I want it out. And I think that when we were aware, I think when everybody became aware of how seriously ill Ken was, we thought we really got to make this happen. And Ken has got to see this, see the light of day before he leaves us. And so it happened, and I'm very happy it did, in that, Ken was with us long enough to realize how much people loved that record, because the reception has been absolutely phenomenal, really. And so that's how the record came about. And now Stuart is now already pushing me, say, when are we doing the next one? When are we doing the next one? So yeah, okay, Stuart, yes, we will do the next one. There's already he's already sent me a few songs, but so yes, and it was released in May or June of this year, and brought us an awful lot of very, very beautiful reviews, and we sold a few copies apparently, which is astonishing in this day and age.
Nice. So I guess besides the record's coming out December 11th.
Yep.
Thunderclouds, and then you're doing the live gig. What else do you have planned for the future?
I think Survive. Planning to beyond that. Certainly, I will do some work with. I've also just finished recording some vocals for an American artist called Noah Wilson, who records under the name Mr. and Mrs. Muffins, and so I recorded some vocals for him. We've got a lot of songs ready to be rehearsed, not to be recorded, but to be rehearsed. So I think the next stage, once we have done what needs to be done with Thunderclouds, is to get ready for a new album, basically, which will be with the same band, plus my usual collaborator, Danny Manners, who couldn't be with us because of time reasons and availability reasons, but he's going to join the fold. And I've got a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like, and a pretty good idea of which songs I want on it, but I'll keep it to that. I'm a bit superstitious when it comes to that. So let's wait until, for the time being, it's all about, at the moment, still all about Thunderclouds and making sure the baby has got, a decent childhood and matures into a fine human being, or a fine vinyl being. And so that's basically that's basically what we're aiming at. So yes, projects, there are still a few.
Excellent. Well, that's all my questions. You got anything else you want to add?
No. I think I've spoken for a long time, and all I've got to say is thank you for having me. And
thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Well, no, it's been my absolute pleasure, and we'll keep in touch, I'm sure. And I hope one day that I haven't visited your side of the world for 13 years. The last time I was there was musically speaking. I've been back, but musically speaking, the last time I was there was to play some keyboards at 2 gigs with the Clientele at the Bowery Ballroom and the museum in Boston. So that's the last time. That's the last time we were. I was around. So let's hope that find a way to come and visit your shores and say hello to our American friends.
Great.
Okay. On this word.